look good. We should be good by now. I always look good though.
So, after some extensive technical difficulties, as per usual, the rOilers podcast here is up and running again.
Can I make sure it's actually running? Yeah.
This is James, Paul McCartney. We have Adam, 446, and our guest today is Nolan. So on the Edmonton Oilers subreddit, his name is Professor Scribbles. I'm sure you guys have seen him there, seen his posts, etc., etc. So I guess let's just start off with you, Nolan. Like, when did you become a fan of the Oilers? Who's been your all-time favorite player, etc., etc.?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Edmonton. I was born and raised here, and I've pretty much never really left the city for any amount of time. So I guess I was just kind of bred to be an Oiler fan. When I was like 10 or 11, I tried picking up hockey, and I got really jaded because everyone around my age was so much better than me. So I stopped caring about it for a little while. And then eventually I ended up like picking up the Sharks, which is why I wear a Marlowe jersey to some games. But now I've, like in the last 4 or 5 years, I kind of picked up the Oilers again and started really getting down into like the management side of things and scouting prospects, how a team works and whatnot. And I've been really into the Oilers for the past couple of years as a result.
And what's your opinion on 3-on-3 with the NHL this year in overtime?
Oh, God. 3-on-3. The game I went to in Pittsburgh with the 3-on-3, with the threat of Malkin scoring any single time he got the puck, was the most exciting hockey game I think I've been to in years. 3-on-3 is awesome. I don't care what Erik Karlsson says about it being unfortunate for defensemen. It's way more exciting than 4-on-4, and it's far more interesting than every single game going to a shootout. I love the 3-on-3. I don't think I'd change anything about it, except maybe starting with the 4-on-4 for 3 minutes and then switching, but I really like 3-on-3.
Actually, on that note, I completely forgot that you actually went on the 6:30 Ched trip. So, who, like, behind the scenes, I guess you talked to Gene and a couple of the guys. Who do you really like in that group, and who do you think could be a little better?
It's hard to really say because of the people that we got to talk to. I think I spent the most time by far talking to
who do you think could be a little better?
I spoke also briefly to Tom Gazzola, and we all met in a bar and talked to Chiarelli and Principe. I think I liked Principe the most, but mostly because I feel like media guys like him and Stauffer, having less ties to the team than Chiarelli, can afford to be more open.
Yeah.
I really liked what I got to talk with Gazzola and the media guys. He was like bumming around with a couple guys doing some behind-the-scenes like TV show stuff for the Oilers that might come out in a couple years when the team's a bit more successful. And I learned a lot of insight from them. So I guess probably Tom Gazzola was my favorite to talk to because I got to learn a lot of things I just didn't know.
Isn't he like super young? Like he's
like 24.
Yeah, no, he looked like he could have been the second youngest person on the trip besides me.
Yeah. He's 23 or 24. He's our age.
Yeah, he's a young guy for sure.
Well, I've actually heard, it's not the first time I've heard that he's easy to talk to, a nice guy and all that, so that's good to know. Now, which do you think, last question before we move on to actual hockey talk, out of, I guess, the ACC, the console, or Rexall, I'm assuming you've been to Rexall or any other rink you've been to, which do you think is your favorite?
I didn't really get into like the seating area of the ACC because we were sitting way up in a box, so I kind of got a top-down view of it. Overall, I think I probably liked the ACC more than I liked console. Console's the newest arena in the league, obviously. That'll change when we get the new one in Edmonton. But there was a charm, I guess, about the fact that there was some place selling beer every 10 feet you walked, and just the intro for the Leafs it really got you pumped up for the game, even though you probably knew the Leafs were going to lose. They didn't, as it happens, but so be it. And I don't know, console seemed pretty quiet. I hear a lot of good things about some American arenas, but I felt like the couple thousand Oilers fans in attendance were a hell of a lot louder than the 15,000 Penguins fans. And the arenas, it's laid out really strange. I think ACC and Rexall are a lot more intuitive in that regard, but I've also only been to 2 of the 3 once.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right.
I really like
I will
the
miss
ACC
Rexall when it's gone, but I'll probably love Rogers. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss Rexall. I mean, I'm not gonna go back unless we manage to make the playoffs and out there in May. So
I'll miss Rexall for nostalgia only. I mean, Rexall is pretty.
it's old. The floors. I remember the floors in the stage back in 2006 being as sticky as like a pop theater just after a midnight showing.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Right, so let's just jump into it. I mean, Oilers have won 5 straight games here, so they are 1 point out of a playoff spot in the Pacific Division right now. It's a weak Pacific Division this year, that's for sure. But you know, what do you think the Oilers can do here? Like, where does this leave them? What do you think?
Nolan, you can start. Yeah.
I guess I'll go first.
Yep.
I don't really think that we have that much of a lead over the teams that we're ahead of. We've only got 1 point over Anaheim, I'm pretty sure, and they have a game in hand. We're 2 points over Calgary, and they have 2 games in hand. It's pretty close to the playoffs, but a quick losing streak would easily put us at the very back. I think we could maybe continue this form, but it'll depend on how well we do without Clefbaum, and if we can keep up this streak and Draisaitl and Hall's amazing play without some more help from the defense, and especially guys like McDavid.
Yeah, we're actually tied in points with Calgary. So they've won 5 games in a row as well.
Yeah, they're technically ahead of us because they have a game in hand.
Yeah, goal differential.
Okay, yeah, the leaderboards I saw didn't update in time, jeez.
Well,
that's fine.
The goal differential for Calgary is -25. Ours is only -8, but we're tied in points. It's bizarre.
Well, I guess it was because the weird thing is we're scoring at 11th in the league right now, but they also played better to start the season than we did.
Yeah, no, we were pretty rough there for a while. Obviously, it's coming around a bit, but
that's the other thing to note. Though, outside of those four first losses, we're over 500. We're 2 games over 500, excluding those 4 first losses. And I know you just can't exclude them, but it's kind of encouraging to know that after we started against 4 of the toughest teams in the league, who are some of the best teams in the league right now, that we are playing well. And now we're playing well enough that we can beat teams like Boston and Dallas, and actually, you know, I mean, we just almost got destroyed in Dallas, or against Dallas, but we still won. Like, it was one of those games where Nilsson sold up for us, and I think a big part of that is obviously having goaltending that's functional. Now, whether or not we can continue this pace is highly debatable, and I honestly don't think we will. But we can at least say that we're close to the playoffs for the first time in 4 or 5 years, at least.
Yeah, I remember
when we had Kruger, we could have said we were in the playoffs.
Yeah,
that was a real pipe dream even then. Now it's a serious chance in December.
The lockout year, we were in a playoff spot like halfway through the year, and then I remember we lost like 7 games in a row, and then it just went downhill from there.
I think it was after the trade deadline where we fell apart, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. We went on a terrible losing streak.
Frustrating, to say the least.
And then we fired him by escape.
Ooh. McTavish liked Aikens so much.
Yeah, that was a good idea.
So Oilers moves that have happened. I mean, the big one in the last couple days here: Mark Fane down, Nikitin up. What do you think this is? Is this just showcasing? Because a lot of people are just saying now they're showcasing Nikitin for a trade, because I guess people have been kicking the tires on him. Adam, what do you think is going to happen with Nikitin here?
I'd like to say that they're going to trade him, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think you, me, and Arun had a big debate of it, whether it's over the more me and Arun over after the game last time, and we were debating whether or not it's easier to trade Nikitin or who was the other one? Fane. And basically what it came down to is Nikitin is only a rental for a year. You can retain half the salary, he's then therefore cheaper than Fane, and you can basically use him in case of injury. So whether or not it's they're using him so that they can showcase him and then sell him, we don't know, but at any rate he's going to get playing time eventually, although Ferris is playing tomorrow, I believe. Honestly, I think this is probably a move to showcase him. His stock is high right now, or higher than it was when he went down, because he's playing in the AHL. Supposedly, I haven't seen a game, but if he comes up and plays even moderately okay, they might be able to sell him to a team that's been hurt by injuries, like Ottawa, for example, has been the first one that comes to mind. Their defense is terrible. Nikitin's probably right up there with them, so it makes sense for some teams. the other side of it is Nikitin wasn't even good enough to make an Oilers roster that has arguably 4 or 5 defensemen that could be considered bottom 6, and with that salary, you're going to have to retain a good chunk of it. So it's arguable that even then, Nikitin is just basically up so that if anything happens, he can play, and it gives Reinhart more playing time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm not entirely convinced by the Fane move, but again, I don't really know what's going on with inside the locker room and McClellan and how Fane's been, I guess, progressing relative to other defensemen. I do remember specifically we've heard a lot of rumors of Chicago kicking the tires on like a Nikitin for Bickle, and obviously Chiarelli didn't find that to be adequate returns, so maybe if there is credence to the Nikitin's been doing well in the AHL story and he wants to try and buff him up for a trade, maybe Chiarelli can get something a little bit better than just a salary swap, like, I don't know, maybe get the same value of pick back that we did when we traded for his rights. I mean, if Nikitin's getting this kind of treatment, I guess what I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter about your past as long as you start to perform well. Maybe we can see Fane come up in a month or two. Maybe he was given the same sort of, I guess, ultimatum as Nikitin, either start playing well or you're going to be a career AHLer as long as you're on this team. And for Fane, with, I think, 2 years after this left on his contract, that actually does mean something.
Now, would you, sorry, before you answer that, James, would you say that this is Nikitin's last chance to play, to prove that he can play in the NHL, and maybe that's why they gave him a shot?
I guess. I don't know. Maybe he'll end up going back to the KHL. I mean, I really don't know. In my mind, this is definitely a showcase for Nikitin. You, me, and Arun have been talking about this for like the last few days here. Fane, like, we're pretty convinced that Fane is still an NHL defenseman.
I really didn't like that move. I don't know. What do you think, Noel? I really did not like the move.
Yeah, I mean, there must have been, Fane must have done something to piss McClellan off, and McClellan let Chiarelli know. Like, he must have said something during a practice or got vocal or something like that, because I don't think he's been playing that bad. Although, again, not progressing, and he's around 26, so maybe he's looking for more improvements than Fane is willing to provide and not willing to step up, like, I guess guys like Gryba have.
I wouldn't even think...
Before you continue on, actually, someone in the comments has said something about that. Mitch Rice says, Nikitin is going to have massive giveaways, play one game, and won't dress again. This team has too many defensive holes to start showcasing, in my opinion.
I absolutely agreed. I just think he's going to... Frankly, he's going to shit the bed. Ferentz is starting over him right now, and if that Ferentz is starting over Nikitin, Ferentz is going to shit the bed. Basically, it's going to be where one of the two is going to have to play, and although I'd take Nikitin over Ferentz, I'd take Reinhart over both of them in a heartbeat. I'd even take Ulsterley over both of them.
Is Davidson injured out as well, or just Clefbaum?
Just Clefbaum, but it'd be Davidson, Schultz, Sekera, Nurse, and then Ferentz or Nikitin.
Oh, jeez.
Because Reinhardt's down on the farm, right? Yeah, it's...
Hearing that 5 games into the season instead of now, like the way Sekera's been playing, jeez.
That's encouraging. I completely...
Sekera's been better. I mean, at the beginning of the season, and when we signed him, I was like, this is cautious optimism, but I'm not super stoked on it. Then at the beginning of the year, he seemed like pretty rough, but I think he's rounded into form pretty well. Like, I can admit when someone's playing well, and I didn't think that they would be. I mean, he's definitely not a number one, but
he's better.
He's being okay.
Is he a lateral move from Petrie for you now?
More or less, I guess, yeah. I mean, he still doesn't give us the number one that we're looking for, but, I mean...
But, actually, I completely interrupted you. I'm sorry about the Fane going down and Nikitin coming up point. Do you think it's a showcase for Nikitin, or...?
Yeah, it's got to be a showcase for Nikitin, because, I mean, there literally is no reason. I mean... Unless
management actually thinks that he can be an NHL defenseman and wants to give him a chance again?
Wasn't Clefbaum injured after he was called up?
No.
Before.
It was just after. I'm pretty sure.
Like, it was like the same day or something. I don't know. But...
Oh, was it actually?
Fane will be back. Like, he should be back. He's still an NHL defenseman, regardless of whether he's a 4 or 5 or a 6. I mean, he's still good enough to play in the league. it's got to be a showcase for Nikitin. I don't know who they're going to trade him to, but like you were saying, I mean, Ottawa's defense needs some serious work. I was reading an article the other day. Chris Phillips' playing days might be done. So
I think he's done for the season, actually.
yeah, he's like, I'm pretty sure he's done for good.
Neil is also Neil's a forward though, so that's a stupid question. But Borowiecki is basically Gazdic on defense.
Yeah.
And Weirkosh isn't much better.
No.
So I've seen that team, and I watched them live. So
yeah,
I don't need to see any more of that core. Carlson is literally carrying the defense along with Mathot.
Yeah, isn't he almost a point a game?
He's at 32 points right now. He's over a point a game. He's sixth in the league in scoring as of last night.
That's sick.
It's ridiculous how well he's playing. It's absolutely absurd.
That is.
It makes you a lot more willing to believe the things that Ottawa fans were saying last year about, well, you don't understand, Carlson's probably the best defenseman in the league. Now you'll see. And, well, now I guess we're kind of seeing it. And before we continue on, 2 comments. One, Arunatic5, I think I recognize that guy, says, Adam, your audio sounds horrible, like super staticky. And Mitch Rice earlier said, any way to turn audio down on the bottom guy, which would be you, Adam, much louder than the other 2.
Yeah, I'll fuck with that. Just 1 second. Guys, keep talking.
Okay. Well, next point up is, we covered Clefbaum a little bit there. Nilsson, I mean, it has to be brought up. He was not great against the Rangers. He let in, 5 goals, but is he the number 1 starter for the team now? What do you guys think? 5 straight wins. He's played pretty well for the most part. Do you put him as the undisputed number 1, or what?
Well, I mean, I think he does have to be the number 1. I don't know if it's undisputed as of yet, but I mean, it would take a guy like Braden Holtby to not have at least 1 weak game every 6 or 7. Nilsson's been playing incredibly well outside of that 1 game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he'll ever really be an elite goaltender, or at least he won't show it this season. I mean, he's 25. Mm-hmm. That's practically a kid for goalies.
Yeah.
But if I don't see how Talbot can win his spot back right now with the way Nilsson's been playing. Nilsson would have to either get injured or continue to play as poorly as he did against New York.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, that's still against one of the best teams in the league. Expecting him to get exposed by them isn't that far out of the question.
Yeah, New York is a great team, so, I mean, it kind of begs the question, like, well,
that's
kind of like what you said. Talbot would have to play out of his mind if he ever gets in a game again, combined with Nilsson shitting the bed on more than 1 occasion. I mean, an injury would obviously force their hand, but the way it stands for me, or the way that it looks to me right now, is Nilsson is the undisputed number 1, and it would take like almost a month of Nilsson playing bad and Talbot playing good to reverse that. I think that they want a number 1. I don't know if they really want the competition. That's the way that I see it, because I'm sure that they're sick and tired of trading back and forth. Last season when they had Scrivens and Victor Faths, I mean, neither of them really, settle into a number 1 role. And in my mind, like, they say that they're good with competition, but I think that the team wants a solid number 1 goalie that they can always depend on. That's just the way I see it.
I think the primary issue that they're running into right now is that the reluctance to at least declare number 1 is that you traded all these picks for this guy that is more than likely going to be an NHL goalie for a while in Talbot. And regardless of how he started the season very well. Like, you can't say he didn't hit a 9.36 or something over the course of the first couple of games when we weren't scoring at all. Like when we had 0 goals. And so, sorry, Talbot is going to be a good goalie, but now you have this other guy who you signed, who not only put your other starter in the AHL, but it now took over the number 1 role, and you don't know whether or not he can do it because of his past history. And although things have changed, like his diet's changed, and apparently he's adopted the Dubnyk head thing, that's apparently changes the game a lot. I think they're reluctant to call him their number 1 because Talbot still has so much talent and potential behind him, and the proven history of NHL success. So we have a couple back-to-backs in December and January, and what I could see happening is if Nilsson strings together a couple games like he did against New York, then Talbot will probably get he'll get the back-to-backs. And if he plays well in the back-to-backs, then he'll get the benefit of the doubt moving into a game, couple games rest kind of game. And if he plays well on that, then maybe they can go back to 50-50 kind of thing. But right now, I think Nilsson is our undisputed guy as of right now, just because of how well he's played. Not necessarily because Talbot's been terrible, he's not been great, but just because of how good Nilsson's been.
Yeah. Mitch Rice says in the comments, yes, it's not Nilsson, it's this team's defense. The defensive depth is at least a year behind the offense in terms of development, major defensive holes, and as Edmonton fans, we've always been quick to blame the goalie.
You're not wrong. I mean, which is funny because then you have situations where sometimes you do have to blame the goalie. I mean, last year our defense was terrible, but if you look at it, we had the worst 2 goaltenders in the league. Like, you can't do anything with that. Even if your defense is terrible, when you have both goalies putting a below 900 save percentage, it's not productive. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're at a below 800 save percentage and you're scoring above 20th in the league, then it's obviously an issue with your goaltending or defense. But if you're scoring 26th in the league and like we were last year and your goaltending is terrible, you have a bad team, but your goaltender's not helping much. Like, our PDO was average, I think, last year, despite the fact that we were terrible.
Yeah, I think I remember that being brought up before.
It's just one of those things.
And whatnot, yeah.
Anyway,
all right, let's move on from the goalies. They kind of give me PTSD. You're not gonna lie.
The one thing that Nolan actually brought up to me the other day when we were talking before we started is now with all this, with Nilsson playing well, what the hell do you do with Talbot and Brossoit next year?
Yeah.
Isn't Nilsson just on a 1-year contract?
Yes.
Both of them expire this year, I think.
Yeah.
And Brossoit is actually an RFA after this year. His contract expires as well.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
It's voodoo.
Isn't Brossoit still like 21, 22?
22.
He is really young.
He's 22.
I mean, I would still be okay with keeping him down in the AHL next year. Well, I don't think that would be the end of the world for him.
What about guys like Martin Jones who've come in and played well in the AHL at his age? And he's dominating the AHL right now.
Yeah. I don't know, you're right. You have to give him a chance. I mean, I don't know how they're going to make it work. They're probably going to say goodbye to Scrivens after this year.
Oh, absolutely. He's gone.
I mean, there's not much more you can say about that. Maybe bring over Edu Lorakainen from Finland for next year for the AHL. I'm not sure who they have in the ECHL. I can't think of it.
Ty Rimmer, I believe.
Yes.
That who it is? Okay. Mm-hmm. I was just about to say Tyler Buns, but I know he's gone.
Last year.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think that I don't know. That's basically what I'm getting at. Nilsson, he's played himself like a new contract pretty much already, I think. And Talbot, they gave up like a bunch of low round picks, but at the same time, Talbot was the guy that had all the hype coming into this season, so I think he's going to have a longer leash than Nilsson would. Even though Nilsson has outplayed him, absolutely, Talbot had the hype, and so he'll have the longer leash. It's like the Senators in the early 90s. Alexander Daigle was the number one, and Yashin was the guy who was actually playing well, and Alexander Daigle had the long leash because he's the one that was supposed to kick ass and take names, but Yashin is the one who was actually kicking ass and taking names.
It's a good point. I like that. Nolan, what do you think?
I think if the season ended today, if the season did end today, I would re-sign Nilsson for 3 to 4 years at $4 or $4.5 million. He's played pretty well. Not if it ended today. If we extended the sample size of this season so far over the course of an entire season and then it ended.
Okay, yeah.
Talbot kept playing the way he's kind of been playing just okay, and Nilsson's been doing pretty good, I would probably re-sign Nilsson and Brossoit. And I would either sign Talbot for 2 years and say, all right, you had a bad year, that's fine, everyone has it. Show me that was just a bad year, show me it was a fluke, show me you can keep playing well as we thought you could. Or try to trade him at the trade deadline for something of value, because a guy who has the potential to be a starter and is very close to getting it definitely has value, because we traded for him for that exact reason, and he's only 1 year older. I'm not really convinced that Nilsson can keep it up, but he hasn't. It's not like he's been playing kind of like Scrivens, where every time the puck is in our zone, you're really concerned that they might just score anyway, even if Scrivens is quote-unquote playing well. Nilsson gives a lot of confidence when he's in the net, and our defense being, I think, slightly better than last year helps with that. Mitch Rice has made a whole bunch of comments about goaltending as well. It's not just save percentage, look where the shots are coming from, prime scoring locations. We can't hold shooters to sharp angles like other teams with star goalies typically do. And that's fair. I mean, we're never going to make... Nilsson and Talbot are in a position where they have to make themselves look like stars.
Yeah.
It's not like with New York, where you could probably put anybody behind that net and they'd look pretty good. I mean, obviously Lundqvist is a step above everybody else in the league, but, you know, that kind of system would definitely help a goalie look very potent, whereas Nilsson and Talbot are earning their keep strictly on how good they look, because our defense is just good enough to let that happen.
Is my audio better, by the way? I don't know. I cannot.
He did say much better, Adam. Still a little louder, but it's totally tolerable.
It's tolerable.
Okay.
So
I'll have to make sure.
Find the way that it is. I wouldn't sweat it too much.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to work on that too, because I got the new mic later. So, now, actually, I wanted to send that point is I think I would, at this point in time, I think because Brossoit is young enough, I'd leave him in the AHL, but you give him a serious chance to push for backup next year, and re-sign if Nilsson keeps going the way he is, re-sign Nilsson for 2 years, and maybe Talbot for 2 years as well, and that way you're not eating up into Talbot's UFA years too much, so he still has value as a trade piece, and if he has another bad season or half-bad season, you trade him at the deadline. Now that does mean that his value is going to be lower, but at the same time, if Nilsson is good this year and then falls right back into playing poorly again, then you have Talbot still able to be a starter, rather than tossing Talbot out the door this year and then him going to another team and turning into Dubnik 2.0.
Would Brossoit need to clear waivers next season?
He'd need to be 28 or play at least 7 seasons in the NHL, so no.
Is that...
We would be fine with that.
I always get confused with that. Okay.
You have to be... It's either you're 28 or you play 7 years. So basically it's either if you started in the NHL at 18, then and you played every year, then at 25 you have to clear waivers. Or if you didn't, then at the age of 28 you have to clear waivers.
Okay.
Those basically UFA years.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, that actually seems like a bit more of a conservative approach than I gave, but part of the reason I wanted to give Nilsson 4 years, again, if he kept playing like he has so far, would be to put a little confidence behind him, rather than giving continual, like, show-me contracts like we've been known to do. We tried doing that with Petrie, and it burned us a little bit.
That's a good point, though, is that I think consistency in that, and giving a guy 2 years is kind of, we were good, but show more kind of thing, and that's not really how maybe we should approach it. So that's actually a good point.
No, it absolutely is. I mean, you see what happened with Petrie. We did that, like 3 times to Petrie, at least twice. I mean, if you just look at it objectively, how could the guy not be pissed at us for that?
Yeah, I don't.
He's a good defenseman. Like, he's a second pairing defenseman. He's not a star, but he's a second pairing defenseman. Absolutely. He could play on the Oilers any day of the week. Why would you only sign him to 1-year contracts?
Because he didn't pretty enough.
It rightfully pissed him off, I'm sure. The same thing happened with Cody Franzen as well with Toronto. The same thing has happened with him. He's with Buffalo now, and is he with another 1-year contract?
I think he did sign a 1 year, but that was because he waited way too long.
He did, yeah. He waited.
Yeah, giving him the benefit of the doubt there, at least he was probably asking for too much, so people said, well, you seem to think you're hot shit, so show me that you don't deserve another show me, I suppose.
Yeah.
Haven't heard a lot about him, though.
I don't know how he's been doing this year, honestly.
I haven't heard a lot about Buffalo at all, really, to be fair.
No, me neither. I mean,
Eichel, Ryan O'Reilly
coming into this season. I think that
rOilers played really well.
O'Reilly's had a pretty good year.
Ryan O'Reilly's apparently he's earning that $7 million contract.
Yeah, isn't he in the top 10 in scoring? I can check that. I seem to remember seeing his name up there.
Franzen has 11 points in 30 games, so
not bad for a defenseman.
Amazing. Rasmus Ristolainen's having a great year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
22 points.
I saw this brought up the other day, and the guy that brought it up, I can't remember if it was you, Nolan, but somebody brought it up and they said, looking at how good Rasmus has been this year, do you think we made the right pick with Nurse, or should we go on Rasmus?
That wasn't me, but I think I remember you mentioning it to me, or it was brought up and I had seen it.
Possibly, yeah.
Rasmus Ristolainen. You know, I'm not really convinced. It's been 1 year, I think, for both of them in the NHL now. Or no, he played for Buffalo back in 2013, and apparently last year as well, and he's looked okay. But I mean, he's had 3 seasons to develop in the NHL, whereas Nurse has just been taking it a little bit more slowly because we could afford to. I don't really know if it's fair to start judging either of them yet. As Low Tide says, give it 5 years, but I think we made the right pick on Nurse. He was selected, or he was ranked higher than Ristolainen for a reason, and I believe that still.
Yeah, I don't think that we made the wrong pick. I think Ristolainen lacks Nurse's physical edge. Nurse might not score as much, but I mean, it's not all about points either.
I think Nurse is actually more sound defensively, and we need a guy that's big, strong, and solid both ways.
Yeah,
frankly.
God knows we need a defenseman who actually knows how to play defense after all these years.
Like, I have absolutely no qualms about the Nurse pick with relation to Ristolainen. Ristolainen's having a great year offensively, but you know, Nurse, I don't know, we've just taken the slower path with him, and that's never really been the Oilers' MO. It's nice to see that we're actually doing that. Maybe next year Nurse will break out a little bit more offensively, or maybe he doesn't. I don't know.
Jesus, right?
Nurse keeps his physical edge, his mean edge. He's got terrific speed, mobility. He needs to, I think, reel it in a little bit with his edge. You know, he takes some dumb penalties sometimes, and I don't think Ristolainen.
I don't think we've seen that as much this year, to be honest.
No.
At the beginning, yeah, you're right. At the beginning, he did it. I remember even at the Prospects game against the U of A Golden Bears that they had at Rexall, he took a couple of really.
That was true. Yes, he did. He was not great in that game. Actually, turns out Rasmus is he's 6'4", 207. So they're actually I think Nurse has a couple inches on him, but they're pretty similar in size.
Yeah, I don't know if he plays with the same.
Nurse is allegedly a little bit thinner, but I don't know if that's even up to date.
And
I seem to remember Nurse and I think Nuge had really filled out.
They both bulked up, yeah.
Nurse has filled out immensely.
Anyway.
I remember last year, the 2014 training camp, he looked like a twig. So he's still like...
Which is funny for a guy who's 6'4". I mean, he's obviously bigger than both of us, but, you know.
I don't know how much he weighs now, but he needed to put on some weight, and he did that last year. I mean, he looks like an NHL defenseman now.
Depending on how big he's eating, I could see him hitting like 225 by the time he's 25.
Yeah. Well, what is he now? 20? I mean, a couple beers, a few double-doubles, and some Timbits will be right on his way.
He's 215 right now. He's 6'4", 215.
Yeah.
So he's actually a bit bigger on based on the hockey DB than Rasmus, but he'll be a big boy. Anyway, we should move on a bit more because we're actually at about a half hour so far.
Okay. Yeah. So Teddy Purcell, you know, he started the year off brutally, but he's really picked it up. What do you guys think? Is he playing for a contract, or is he playing for an Oilers contract?
I will jump to the defense of Purcell and say for the first 5 games, 10 games, pretty much everybody except Connor McDavid looked brutal. So I'll give everyone a pass on that start. We got off to a god-awful start this season. Mm-hmm. Everyone was getting used to yet another new coach. You know, trying to see if they can trust the guys they have in net behind them. You know, I guess there might have still even been a little mysticism around Connor McDavid. We didn't get off to a good start, but I think if we went back with that team now, we could probably beat teams like the Blues. And I think with how Purcell's been playing, that wouldn't be too far out of the question, and I think maybe he's deserved a contract, but definitely under no circumstances is he earning how much he's making right now.
Oh dear God, no. Yeah.
Yeah, his cap hit is what, 4.5?
I think so. Yeah.
Ugh.
It's either 4.0 or 4.5. He's making pretty much the same money as Keaton.
Yeah, so he won't be making that much.
Which, if you
He's
think,
making 1.3 McDavids in contract.
think about that for a second, though. Just remember how bad Nikita's contract is when you think about the fact that Purcell's making 4.5. We think that's an overvaluation. He's playing on the top line right now and producing well. And Nikita is in the AHL at 4.5 million a year. Or was. That's just
Farron sitting in the press box is making roughly that much money.
3 point. Well, he's making a million less.
3.25 or
3.25. But he also has a no move clause, which kind of makes everything worse. Anyway, my point is, Purcell. I think Purcell, if he keeps playing the way he is, not even like at this level, but at close to the same level, I think he deserves another maybe 1 or 2 year contract from the Oilers. Definitely not what, like almost half, maybe less than half of what he's making now. Maybe 2. 2 years, $2 million.
I don't think you would accept that. He still has to accept the contract, right? I mean, he's not going to be groveling.
No,
take a
but
50% pay cut.
That's true.
Is pretty substantial. I don't think a lot of people do that unless you're, unless you dropped off a cliff.
So what about 3 million? Well, What about 3 million then?
Like 3 mil, even I think would be like what the base of what he would accept. He's still scoring, like regardless of line mates. His stat line still says that he's got 19 points in 30 games. So he's on pace for roughly 55 points. It looks like.
Could you say though that then is he worth over $3 million to the Oilers?
No, I wouldn't say that he's worth over $3 million to the Oilers, but the stat line says what it says. I mean, it doesn't take into account, well, he sucked Taylor and Leon off all season long to get those stats. Like, at the end of the year, it's going to say, well, he got 55 points, so pay me.
That's true. On the other hand of that, besides the fact that he has played well, I mean, it is a contract year, so it's hard to be sure, but I mean, Teddy does seem like a pretty good person. From the couple media reveals we've seen, he doesn't seem like the kind of person who wouldn't recognize how bad he had been and how not very good he has played. He still doesn't really have any physical game whatsoever, and something very important to consider with all of the guys in the AHL and on the team and on the injured reserve who are on the brink of being able to get into the NHL and make a regular job of it. Do we even have room to keep Purcell for that kind of money? Let alone for long term. I'm wondering if once these injuries come back and once guys like Slepyshev break back in a year or 2 or maybe in a couple months, where does that leave Purcell?
Actually, I think that's an interesting point, which leads to the next topic. So that's a good transition. Well done.
That was a complete coincidence, actually.
Is our bottom 6 is obviously right now. I mean, we're missing our second, third line in Pouliot, Yakupov, and McDavid, and then our bottom 6 is Hendricks, Letestu, Gazdic, Korpikoski, and Klinkhammer. So
he would be coming back. He's not here.
Yeah, so we have that massive glut of bottom. Pakarinen's on there too. Kyra could be considered down there if he's not playing on the second line. So, I think that's kind of doesn't bode well for Purcell unless he seriously improves his production. Because if you think about it, we have Kyra's proven that he can actually play on the second line, and while he's not producing crap ton of points, he's not useless. He's playing pretty well. Pakarinen's proven that he can step in and play okay at the very least. Hendricks played on the top line for a couple of games before he got injured blocking a shot that almost exploded his foot. We have options now. And then the other thing is, wingers are pretty easy to get. I mean, if we look at the AHL right now, Joey LaLeggia is playing on the wing. We can find you for wingers. We can draft wingers. We can move centermen. You don't need to keep a guy who's working with two of the with the two of the best, like one of the best pairs in the league right now, like top of the league, like Ben Sagan, Taze, or not Taze, Kane, Panarin, and then Draisaitl Hall. Like those are the top three pairings. You can put pretty much anybody in his spot right now, and they'll produce. So whether Purcell, I think if Purcell wants to stay on the Oilers, he's going to take a pay cut. Otherwise, is he really necessary to that success? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. There's something to be said for chemistry, but the way that Hall and Draisaitl are playing together right now,
you could have nobody on the ice and they'd still score goals.
Yeah, I mean, you can put Slepyshev on there. You can put Hendricks up there. You can put Purcell up there. I don't know if it's even going to really matter that much. They're just playing so out of their mind right now.
Yeah.
With that list of guys that you listed off there, the bottom six, Gazdic, Lander, Pakarinen, Klinkhammer, etc. Who do you think would stick with the team long term? Like, who do you have? Who's part of this team long term? What do you think?
Nolan, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, sure. At least for the two guys that we have up here right now who are considered quote-unquote prospects, I guess, Euro Pakarinen and Jujhar Khaira, I really, really like what I've seen from Khaira so far, in the sense that unlike when Pitlick was playing on the first or second line before last year, like, Pitlick definitely looked like he wasn't in his comfort zone, even after a couple, I don't think he played many games up, but a couple of games up, he still didn't really look right. Whereas Jujhar Khaira hasn't looked necessarily great anywhere he's played. He doesn't look out of place on any line.
Mm-hmm.
He isn't the main contributor, but getting to see him have someone begin to mouth him off or even give him a dirty look and immediately throw down the gloves and say, let's go, no staging crap, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that kind of energy. And when a guy can move as quick as Khaira can, when he's not afraid to drop the gloves and be a little bit mean, and when he still looks good playing against, top competition, I think a guy like that has to be, at least in your medium-term considerations. Pakarinen's a little bit of the same. He doesn't have the same mean streak, but he's a big guy, and he skates pretty fast, and he doesn't seem out of place on the fourth line. I don't think you'd put Pakarinen on the first line if things were looking dire. I can think of about 12 other players that deserve that, but those two, I think you definitely hold on to for a little while. Other guys, Lander, I've heard really good things about Lander from guys on that 6:30 trip. I've heard a lot of really good things about Lander. He's probably important in the locker room, if nothing else. He gets along with other Swedes, which we have two of, which is, I guess, nice.
Intangibles.
Yeah, those intangibles. He's not that old. You can find guys like him elsewhere, but he could get the homegrown discount, I guess, because we did give him another chance. We almost completely destroyed his career, but we also brought it back from the brink. So maybe we'd get a bit of a hometown discount for at least him being our own prospect. I feel like those three guys definitely need to stay with the team. The guys that are getting close to 30 or on the wrong side of it, like Klinkhammer, Korpikoski, Letestu even, I'm not sold on.
I think, for me, actually, you made a good point with Khaira, is that the amazing thing I think I've seen is that he was one of the drawbacks they said about him initially last year was that his skating wasn't very good, and he came in and he hasn't looked any slower than like Nugent. He's looked a little slower, but he hasn't looked at a place. He hasn't looked like an AHL guy that jumped in the NHL and is trying to find his way. He looks comfortable, and I think the biggest thing that I've seen is puck retrieval. There's been at least 4 or 5 times a game where he goes in the corner, he gets the puck, and he makes a pass to Nuge or Ebbs or the point, and they get a shot off. And that's huge as a winger. Like, he doesn't need to score 50 goals if he can get the puck to everybody else and get a bunch of assists off it. The way I see it is that Korpikoski is not going to last. He's been awful. Aside from that hat trick, he's been pretty bad.
He's been atrocious.
And Letestu hasn't been Gordon at all. Like, he was supposed to be a Gordon replacement. He's been brutal too. I'm still not happy with Lander's game, but at least he's not causing us to turn the puck over continuously. And his face-offs are actually, he's top 10 in the league, or top 20 in the league in face-offs, I think. The way I see it is that Lander right now is 4th on the team in centerman. I put him ahead of Letestu at this point just because Letestu's been terrible. But Korpikoski, Letestu, Klinkhammer, they all don't make it through the off season. Maybe Gazdic has been actually not terrible this year, so I guess he makes it. But I mean, it's kind of a toss up with a lot of our players right now in the bottom six, especially with bottom three. Sorry, just you can toss any of them in there, and whether or not the line's going to be effective, it's not going to be the wagon line from last year.
It's like third and fourth line players, but it's still tough decisions that you have to make.
Yeah, and that's the issue though, is that we can't just
keep it going.
Hendricks stays. I think maybe if Letestu improves, he might stay. You keep Lander simply because that he proved last year he could play, and then whatever the hell is happening this year can't stay this bad for this long. Like something has to break. I think Pakarinen is a usable fourth line player. Even Kyra, maybe even Yakimov next year, depending on how he does this year, because he's playing pretty well. You can use different players in different places that aren't necessarily even here now, and I think they can replace what the bottom three is doing. So I don't even know if realistically any of those players are worth keeping at this moment, aside from the ones that I named that are worth keeping.
Yeah, I don't know. Gazdic hasn't been awful this year. I still don't think he's a long-term player with the team, though.
No.
For me, Gazdic, Klinkhammer, Letestu, and Korpikoski, like those are four pretty easy cuts for me long term. And then you got people like Lander, Pakarinen, like someone like Ryan Hamilton. Isn't he still kicking around somewhere?
Yeah,
I think he might be signed to an AHL contract.
He is.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, we called him up once, didn't we?
We did.
Ryan Hamilton.
Yeah, so.
Hendricks stays for sure. I guess Lander for now. I don't know. Like I was saying, I mean, it's third and fourth line players, but it's still tough decisions because you can't keep them all, and you want to try and improve on them all the time, but you can't have 150 players signed.
If you think about it, though, I mean, we named what, like 7 players in the bottom 6. Yeah. We're still missing our third line. Like, we're still missing 3 players who are guaranteed 100% guaranteed better than all of those guys.
Exactly. So Pouliot,
and Yakupov are immediately slotted in as our third line. So now you have 7 players fighting for 3 spots.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm like, okay, well, you can get rid of at least 4 or 5 of those guys. And then you have AHL is pushing for the spot. So they have some tough decisions to make. Now, we're at 46 minutes. Do you want to maybe pick 2 or 3 topics off the list real quick, do a lightning round, and cut it?
Sure, yeah. So we already talked about the bottom 6 forwards a little bit, so I'm going to skip over those. Reinhart here. So we got Reinhart and then the Glenn Sather jersey retirement. So let's just start off with Reinhart. Do you think that he has a future beyond the third pairing with the Oilers? Nolan, why don't you start off there?
I think it's too hasty to say that he doesn't have potential just because of how he's played so far. I think that he could have probably lower potential than Nurse, but he could have potential that's comparable to him. His main problems are mostly foot speed and unwillingness to be agile on the ice. I think the fact that he was sent down is a good thing because it means McClellan sees something in the player that can improve substantially by not having to play against NHL competition. Third pairing on the Oilers, as the defense currently stands, yes, in 3 years we'll have Sekera, Clefbaum, and Nurse. That 4th spot could go to him. It could go to Schultz, but I mean, being serious, I don't think we'll have Schultz in 3 years. I hope we do because it would mean he's been worth it, but I think Reinhart could definitely be a higher end number 4 or a decent number 3 for our team if it came to that. I think that's roughly what his potential is, and I see no harm in keeping him around until then.
Yeah, I think I don't like having him as a third pairing, considering what we gave up for him, and that's why that trade kind of kicks me in the balls. Is what we gave up for him, and him being relegated to a potential third line role, depending on how the rest of the team shakes out. But if he's a second pairing, I think the trade's worth it. In which case, I do hope and I do see him as potentially a second because I don't see Schultz out of this either. Hopefully he is, but probably not.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the way that I see it as well. He's like 21. I mean, for a
Too young.
defenseman,
Yeah.
he's still a fetus. He needs like 2 or 3 more years, I would say, before he can really even get a handle on what he could be. Yeah. Defensemen, they just take longer. So.
Yep.
Glenn say their jersey retirement. So did you guys watch the? Did you guys watch the ceremony? What did you think of it? Anyone else that strikes you as jersey retiring material?
I caught the last bit of it. I found the rip off of the Last Supper kind of funny.
That was hilarious.
Like I'm absolutely sure that they didn't commission that, but the artist just like, screw you guys, I'm doing it anyway. And I love it. It's great. People are like, oh, it's hideous. No, I love it. I would put that up on my wall. The banner is kind of gaudy, but I kind of like it too. Like with Rod Phillips' number, it's appropriate. But as for next jersey retired, like the ceremony itself was nice. The speeches were good. I like that they gave lots of time to the guy that gave the Oilers to Dynasty. I appreciate that. Next guy for me is the guy whose jersey I'm wearing. That's Smith. And whether or not you think he's not Hall of Fame worthy, but whether or not you think he's legendary, I think he was the Oilers for so many years, and it's not retiring because you were good in the league. It's retiring because you were important to the team. I think ultimately there's 2 guys on the roster. Well, not on the roster, but that have been part of the team for the last decade of Oilers hockey that I've watched that deserve right now to have their jersey retired, and that's Joey Moss and Ryan Smith.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I watched about half of the Glenn say the retirement. Some of it had a tendency to drone on, and I ended up kind of tuning out, waiting for the game to start, to be honest. As for other people who should be retired, I think putting Joey Moss up in the rafters, his number, not literally him, I think, would be fantastic.
I had a terrible vision there.
The story of Joey Moss is just so sweet, and he's been with the team literally longer than anyone else working with it right now, and that's, I think, incredible. I would... Lowe and McTavish, I don't think I'd put Lowe up there. I'd think about maybe putting McTavish's number up there, but not retiring it, or maybe just putting his banner up there. I would very heavily consider retiring Smith's jersey, because he was the identity of the team for over a decade, and I don't think anyone since, and maybe even prior, has cared about the Oilers more than he has.
Mm.
That's a level of heart that we just haven't seen, period, or at least I haven't seen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, Smith to me is the only one that you can even consider putting up there. Lowe and McTavish, they're just too closely associated with a lot of bad things about the team, a lot of bad memories, inept management, coaching decisions, etc., etc. I think that in a decade or so, when memories fade a little bit, blood, it's a water under the bridge sort of thing, maybe you can revisit it. But right now, I think it's not even an option for me. Smith is definitely the only one that I would be okay with.
Yeah, I'd say in the next, if we win a cup in the next 5 to 7 years and we're good and making playoffs in the next 5 to 7 years consistently, then you can consider retiring Lowe. But right now, for me, it's just Smitty. Maybe eventually Taylor Hall, depending on how good he is, because he's approaching the top bit of where there's scoring.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's Smith. We're obviously I'm obviously severely biased, and I'll admit it, because he's arguably my favorite player along with Sakic, and I would absolutely love to see his jersey retired. And you guys know that would be the best jersey retirement ceremony ever, because he'd be crying the entire time.
Absolutely.
And
it'd be amazing. I don't know, but yeah. So he's my pick. Anyway, I think we're at 53 minutes, so unless you want to go longer, I think we should cut it off soon.
Yeah, no, let's just cut it off now. I think we've done everything that we need to do, so we kept the time pretty well today.
Timers are useful.
For the first time in ever.
Yeah, we started late, but we swear that wasn't our fault this time.
So yeah, let's wrap it up here. So, any final words from everybody here?
I just want to say that if you guys actually made it, for anyone that made it this far and donated to Yak Charity, that we're actually over $1,000, which is twice the goal we started with. is incredible. So thank you so much. If you want to keep donating, of course, I know I'm going to keep doing it. The podcast is going to keep donating for every month. Right now we're donating a set amount for every game Neil Yakupov misses, plus our own amount. I'm doing for goals, assists, hat-trick, and Cody Howe hat-trick, along with whatever games he misses. I think Nolan has donated as well. I'm not sure.
I haven't yet, but I do plan on it maybe for Christmas.
Yeah, and I wanted to also mention that we're considering doing a charity podcast of some sort with maybe alcohol and games involved closer to New Year's, although I have to talk to some people about that, so I'm not sure what's going on with that yet. That will be asking as many people to join us as possible, regardless of whether you're a mic or not, regardless of whether or not your webcam is awful, your mic is awful, whatever. We'll talk about that later. At any rate, I want to say big thank you, Nolan, for joining us and for watching all of our casts and participating like you do. You make everything we do better because you participate, and that's easier for us to work with. So thank you for joining us. James, thanks for hosting today because I had issues. And I guess from all of us at our rOilers podcast, thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Follow us on Twitter.
Yes, please follow us on Twitter. We're trying to be funny. We're not very funny, but we're trying.
Yes, it's a work in progress.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for having me.
Yep, we'll see you guys next time.